A very good afternoon, everyone. I am Neha Gupta from Shipway and your host for the day. I hope you and your family are keeping well and safe. I would like to welcome you for this session where we are going to talk about unlocked D2C growth hacks by Abhishek Shah. Learn how ALMO has achieved 2 crore monthly GMV. Today's event is brought to you by Shipway, a shipping automation company and awarded as Logistics Startup of the Year. With our fast and efficient logistic automated fulfillment solutions and tool for communicating with customers in real time, Shipway provides single platform shipping solutions for D2Cs to reduce their customer queries and enhance customer experience. Now we have a robust community of over 12,000 online sellers, mid-sized enterprises, entrepreneurs reaching over 15 crore customer base worldwide and still counting. So moving ahead with our session, it's time to welcome our guest for today. He's visionary with execution excellence, immense sense of ownership and clarity. He believes in first principles and solve all the problem statements for scalability rather than urgency. Having built teams from scratch, he resonates strong character of a true leader, centering all of his actions around his team's growth. Guys, we have Abhishek Shah with us, founder and chief executive officer at ALMO Digital Private Limited. A very warm welcome, Abhishek. Would you like to say a quick hi to our audience?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Neha, for the very kind intro. Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for making it here. Very excited to host this session and walk you guys through some of our learnings and also field your questions, and hope this is productive for everyone.
All right, guys. So brace yourself. Now we are all set to start the session. Moving ahead with the first question of the event. Being an entrepreneur requires you a lot of hard work, and it requires you to surf through different turfs on in one go. So it is a continuous roller coaster ride. So what inspired you to become an entrepreneur? Please introduce yourself and share your entrepreneur journey with our audience.
Right. I think that's a great question to start with. It's a long one. I'll try to keep it very short. But yeah, I think there are a few things in your early career which influences your direction. I was very lucky. I passed out from an MBA and I was very sure I wanted to be in digital. I ended up joining a company called Smile Group. So Smile was like the incubator for all digital businesses in India. And I ended up working with Harish sir and Manish, who were the pioneers of digital in India. And I think entrepreneurship is contagious. Once you work with those kind of people, it just comes into you. And I was like the seventh employee of Tyru, which was one of the incubations of Smile. And yeah, I think I worked there for 2 years and had decided by then कि यही करना है, मतलब startups से नहीं रहना है. Because once the bug bites you, it's very difficult for you to be normal again. And but then it was always clear that I don't want to work for them. I want to work for myself. If he can do it, then I can also do it. So I left Tyru and started my first venture in 2010. It was a local group buying website called Wanamo, which got acquired, and we rebranded to Deals and You. And I think it's been a series of experiments and series of adventures. Like you said, it's been a roller coaster ride. But I think in a sense, it's always been that curiosity to create something, that desire of, leaving something which is bigger than you, which obviously is beyond monetary and beyond, personal goals. It's more about that vision, that curiosity of, something you believe is a problem and you want to solve that problem, or you see an opportunity. As entrepreneurs, we see opportunities everywhere, right? So I think that becomes part of your DNA, and it just becomes a way of life. So it's like I always say, entrepreneurship is a lifestyle choice. It's not like one journey. It's a whole lifetime, right? So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. But I think that launchpad of getting the right direction and getting the right mentors and getting the right environment at very early stage of your career, I think it happened by luck. But yeah, I also capitalized on that and I've stuck to that. So yeah, the journey still continues.
Like you said, the entrepreneurship is all about it's contagious, right? It's all about passion. So I'm sure your story has inspired many young people to pursue their entrepreneurial path. So moving on to
Yeah.
the next question, we all know that you run a great men's essential wear fashion brand. So why did you choose this category, and how you are differentiating from the competition? What are the key areas, strategies that will give Almo a competitive advantage in the coming months and years?
Right, right. So Almo is actually a very personal journey. My last startup was, one of the first men's fashion online retailer. It was called fetis.com back in 2011-12. It was too early, and we were pioneers of online fashion back then. When Jabong was not launched, Flipkart was doing books, Myntra was selling t-shirts. It was too early maybe, and a lot of people told us, "Yaar, ye to ho hi nahi sakta. Who's going to buy fashion online?" And we did men's only because we felt that men as a segment was underserved. I think we did very well in that way. We were at the right place at the right time, but it's just that we could not sustain. That time the CACs were like really crazy, and we were also young. I mean, it was my second startup, and first startup was like very short lived. So eventually Fetis shut down. But in Fetis, we used to sell a lot of innerwear as part of men's lifestyle. We had different categories, and innerwear was one of the categories. And whenever I used to go to Shopper Stop and any of the offline shops, I used to always see that there is no supply. And here we were selling all international brands online, right? So always saw that as a gap, and obviously followed Page Industries. And Page Industries, if you guys know, is like one of the darlings of the stock market. It's a great company, 20% EBITDA, 4,000 crore revenue. So that was very clearly a blue gap, blue ocean in the market, and kept thinking about it. And it remained at back of my mind because 2014 we shut down Fetis, and eventually 2018 is when we started ALMO. We started working on ALMO. So it took some time to really convert the vision into reality. But yeah, I think it's been just a problem statement which has been there in the back of the mind, because I was so close to the consumer and I could see their behavior, and I could see a mismatch in the domestic supply market. So I think that way Almo is like a Fetis 2.0 for me, right? So where Fetis ended, that journey has restarted with Almo. So obviously Fetis was a retailer, Almo is a private label. We are a D2C brand. So I think a lot of negatives of retail in terms of margins, competition, differentiation. With Almo, we are completely 100% private label. So obviously we are sitting on, better margins and differentiation. And now all our competitors like Amazon, Flipkart are actually partners, right? So that way, I think from a timing perspective, also in the last 2-3 years, D2C really started taking off. Because back then in 2012-13, if you would talk to any investors, they would say that private labels are not a tech-friendly business. It's not a fundable business, right? But 2015-16, later on, post that, D2C started picking up. So I think the timing was also right. And with Almo, the vision always has been to basically cater to that evolved audience, that evolved man who has moved on, from the mass brands, who's looking at experimenting, who has got exposed to international, lifestyle brands, but who's not able to like really, get that, locally. So the propensity to spend is there, but there is a gap in the supply demand equation, right? So that's what Almo is trying to fill in by bringing international quality and designs to the Indian consumer, and not at a price point which would be, prohibitive for them, right? So we are bringing it at a price point which is value for money for them, right? So that way we are trying to bridge that gap between mass and premium. And I think digital is the great medium to do that, to create the brand and reach consumers directly. So I think it's the right timing and just the vision which has been there for a long time, and just things coming together and eventually happening. And I think that's a very important part. If you believe in something, at some point it will happen, right? So it's something which doesn't leave you. I mean, it just stays with you.
Very well said, and then very insightful points. And since we have recently seen the evolution in e-commerce domain, that from vertical brand to horizontal brands, then marketplaces, and now D2Cs are post COVID. So the ecosystem is evolving really vast. So thank you so much for sharing those insightful points. So, guys, before we jump on to next question, here is a quick announcement. So, if you have any questions which you wanted to ask Abhishek, please drop them in a questions tab, not in a chat section, or else they'll get missed. So, next question. So, when you have a large section of audience, segmenting the target group or customers help you to convert them faster. So, what is your target audience and how you ensure customer retention and engagement?
Right, right. So like I mentioned, if you look at our peer, our traditional peer like Jockey, right? So when they came into India 20 years back, India was full of super mass brands. Jockey actually came and pioneered mass premium, and they went after the middle class of India, right? At that time, 91, 92, India had liberalized, and all the foreign brands were coming in. And I think that aspiration of the middle class was rising, right? I think today we are in a very similar situation, but we are basically saying that 20 years later, that audience now considers Jockey to be a mass brand, right? So it's just that the next generation, the next two generations have been using Jockey, and we are now targeting that millennial younger audience. Not very young, we are not targeting like teens, but we are targeting 25 to 40 is our age range, and we are targeting essentially metrosexual men, if you call it like that. So urban male, who are well traveled, who are into health, fitness, who want to spend on themselves, look good, feel good. So we are targeting a more aspirational audience for whom today a mass brand is not cool enough, right? And who are looking at international brands, right? And we are trying to fill that void for them. And digital becomes a great, medium for us. You mentioned marketplace and D2C. I think for us, we have always been D2C first, and D2C is a great way for us to like micro target these audiences on Instagram, on Facebook, and communicate them our USPs, and tell them about our products and make them try the product, right? So from a target audience perspective, that is our nucleus. But however, we are seeing like a huge demand from tier 2, tier 3 towns, from because I think there is a overall consumerism which has, in India in the last 5-10 years, if you see, Indian consumers are really coming of age, and they are demanding more, and they are willing to experiment more. So I think with that trend, we are going after a mass market. We eventually want to cater to the entire Indian market.
So, the rising competition in D2C has led brands to aggressively invest in technology solutions to solve various business operational problems. So, how technology is elevating post-purchase experience, enabling growth of D2C brands in India? So, what is your view on that? And what technology, tech-enabled shipping logistic tools does the D2C brands can leverage to build strong e-commerce operations?
Right. I think that's a very interesting question, because having been through the e-commerce cycle since 2008, right? I think some of us who might be doing it for the first time or doing it in the recent few years, we have no idea, how the ecosystem was 10 years back. I think we are very, very lucky today that the ecosystem has really evolved, not just from a payment infra, but from a, from a front end perspective, from a back end perspective, from logistics, supply chains, all of that, right? So I think today, it's the world of SaaS, and everything is available at a click of a button. So right from, let's say, an Unicommerce or a EasyCom, which is your order management system, to Shopify, which is your CMS and front end, to then, let's say a Click Post or a Shipway, which is basically an intermediary between the logistics and the order management system, and then the logistic companies, aggregators, including Shiprocket and all of this, right? So I think 10 years back, none of this was available, and we had to build all of this on our own, and that is why the cost of business was so high, for someone to build an e-commerce business. Today, I think with Shopify democratizing the entire ecosystem, and with guys like you guys like Shipway and Web Engage, and all of these guys coming in, I think it's become very, very seamless. From a consumer experience perspective, today you can track orders real time. Today you can send notifications, you can send real time communication, you can segment it. So I think from a customer experience perspective, it has really gone up, like maybe 100x from where it was. But at the same time, I think the expectations from the consumers also have gone up really high, right? So today a consumer expects the same Amazon experience wherever they shop, right? And that is a benchmark which has been set. So for all of us running D2C businesses, especially because we are in the D2C space, the expectations from us is even higher, right? So from a stack perspective, from order management to CMS to your logistic aggregation, your algorithms for return management, something small like return management, which is what a Shipway would help automate, right? Like if you shop on Myntra or you shop on Amazon, the return experience is so smooth, but Shopify by default does not have a return module, right? So that's where we integrate a Shipway, where we can basically give consumers a self-serve mechanism to track their returns, generate their returns, and these are hygiene factors today. These are no longer USPs, right? So consumers expect these basics to be there, because they're so used to shopping on Amazon and Flipkart and Myntra, right? So I think when they come to a brand website, they're expecting a very similar experience. Although obviously it's an unfair expectation, because as a small brand, we really don't have the infra or the technology to compete with an Amazon. But that's where all enablers like you guys come in, where you empower us and you give us the tools, and you obviously are developing it for a broader merchant base. And I think it's like wonderful to see the ecosystem develop. And I remember 10 years back there was no AWS also, right? So our servers used to crash every time, and we used to go to a physical server in Bombay, and so today everything like AWS is like hyper scalable, right? So I think today for an entrepreneur to like really start, the entry cost is low. You can give a great customer experience, at least a standardized experience, and obviously incrementally from there we can build up. But yeah, I think the ecosystem has really evolved, and I think still a long way to go. Looking at the way customer expectations are increasing, we all need to like keep pulling our weight behind on, taking the customer experience a notch higher.
So, of course, the ecosystem has evolved, and initially brands were focusing on getting the ROI rather than focusing on the customer. Now, looking at the current scenario, every brand is now focusing on developing a great customer experience. That's how you build your relationship with your customers, and everyone is looking for a LTV, good LTV, right? So, moving on to next question, this to sell directly to consumer, you need somewhere to sell from, right? And when it comes to online, you can either sell through marketplace or your own websites. D2C brands have those sort of options, right? So, shed some light on your experience in selling on both marketplaces and websites. What major difference did you observe, and which one is more profitable as per your experience?
So obviously, marketplace is like a plug and play infra, right? I mean, you can just plug in your product and they have the demand pool, they have the technology pool, they have the infra pool, they have the logistics pool, marketing pool, right? So I think marketplaces is obviously a easier entry to market. However, from a strategic perspective, having your own direct to consumer touch point, and that's what D2C is all about, right? I mean, although we would drive a lot of our sales through marketplaces, because I think marketplaces also are a ready demand pool, from a customer discovery perspective, right? So because all of us are new brands, for us discovery is very, very important, right? However, even if some part of our sales is coming from our D2C, that really helps us in terms of getting customer data, getting real-time information on what the customer is liking or not liking. And I think that is where D2C really helps, because and that is where maybe compared to our traditional peers we have an edge, right? So I would always say that although profitability wise marketplaces will be more profitable in the short run, but from a strategic value perspective, D2C is where the long-term strategic value is. And it's a very complicated skill set. And again, I would say like enablers like Shipway are really making it easier, although it is still very, very complicated stack, right? To run your website, to get traffic, to get conversion, and then retention, and customer loop, and then the whole loop from ordering till delivery and the return loop, right? All of this is taken care of by the marketplaces at their end, right? So as an entrepreneur, you can really get started easily on Myntra or Amazon. But eventually, you will not have any data, you will not have much understanding of why it is selling or what is the consumer's review. Here on D2C, we can really like get on a call with a customer, we can see their trends, we can see who's ordering, what pin code. So I think a good balance between both is very critical to have. India has always been a retail market, so it's always been heavy on marketplaces. But I think in the last 2-3 years, we have really seen a lot of brands come up with their D2C side, and being able to capitalize on it, grow it. And Facebook has been a great enabler there, right, from a discovery perspective. So I think for us at ALMO, our DNA has always been D2C. So we are the opposite. We are like majority D2C. We are marketplace, we are minority on the marketplace side. But that's also because we've not capitalized on marketplaces, fully till now, right? So as a brand, obviously you would want to be omni-channel. It doesn't matter which channel you are on. You would want to be wherever the consumer is. But from a strategic value, I think D2C is very, very critical. Even like I said, even if it is 20-30% of your sales, it doesn't need to be 60% or 80%. Or even 100%. But even if it is 20%, it gives that 20% gives you a lot of data, customer understanding, ability to like experiment, launch small MOQs, try out, like you can actually track real time which page is getting what conversion and what add to cart. That is not possible in any other channel, right? Even on marketplaces. So I think as D2C entrepreneurs, for us, that skill set is very, very core to develop. And that's where I think all the enablers like Shipway and EasyCom, Unicom, and all of you, right? I mean, you guys are really making it easy for us. Otherwise, we would have no way to like run a D2C stack on our own.
Awesome insights. Thank you so much. I'm sure our audience definitely loving the points which you are sharing with them. So some of our attendees have asked a few questions. So let's pick up the questions and answer them.
Sure.
So first question, or just one. Yeah. So Vasant Tamil is asking which medium you use for the customer acquisition.
Right. Hi, Vasant. Good to have you here. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I wanted to just mention when it comes to acquisition. And Neha, you also mentioned retention. So I think retention is a function of obviously the product experience and the customer experience, as well as then your efforts to be able to build cohorts and target the consumers with the right communication. But from an acquisition perspective, I think the overall industry has been too dependent on Facebook, right? In the last 3-4 years, if you see, I think there have been a lot of headwinds on the Facebook side because of the iOS changes, and I think every brand has been struggling on customer acquisition. Same for Almo, right? Luckily for us, we have never been very heavily dependent on Facebook. We have always focused more on CRM and retention than just acquisition. So I think that whole funnel of acquiring a user and then being able to convert the user and then repeat the user, if you run that together as a parallel stack, then your acquisition cost will also make more sense, from a lifetime value, from a CAC to LTV ratio, right? So we have never been very heavy on just acquisition, but from an acquisition stack, obviously the same, common culprits, right? Facebook, Google, we use affiliates, we use, partnerships like, Magic Pin and, different partners like Cred and, a bunch of these Airtel and all of this, right? So I think from acquisition perspective, wherever you can acquire consumers at the right ROI, and if you can acquire the right audience, where you see the cohort of that audience converting and repeating, right? uh, the options are very limited right now for D2C brands. I think every brand is struggling for discovery and acquisition, and that is the biggest challenge for D2C right now. But because of our background in digital marketing and having the relationships and partnerships, I think we have always deleveraged ourselves from Facebook. So Facebook would be maybe 30-40% of our traffic, but not like most brands would have 70-80%. But partnerships have worked really well for us, because there you can like really something like a lot of us D2C brands coming together and marketing to each other, right? So we have done that with Man Company, with Beardo, with Bombay Shaving Company, with so wherever there is a male audience for us, we go ahead and we tie up and we do co-marketing and cross-marketing, right? That has given us like really great ROI, great audience base, because those are already savvy consumers who are already shopping on our peers, but not direct competitors, right? And then when you're acquiring consumers through Facebook, you need to build top of the funnel, you need to educate them on why shop online and why shop on Almo. But with a lot of these savvy consumers, it's much easier for us to like target them. So it's been a mixed bag for us, but yeah, majorly it will be paid media driven and then CRM for retention and repeats.
Very awesome, very good points you have shared. Like, of course, I completely agree with this with you. Is like cross-selling partnerships are really work for D2C brand and even any brand. And apart from that, affiliate also really work well, because there you can just deal with the flat CPAs basis
Right.
on your margins. Yeah. So, what strategies you adopted to compete with other giants in the innerwear industry?
I think fundamentally, your value proposition from a product assortment, what you're offering to the end consumer has to be different, and then build distribution on top of it, right? So for us, we have been in a very different offering compared to, let's say, our mass. If you're talking about the peers, the traditional peers, I think they are in a very mass segment. We are offering a lot of innovation in terms of our product itself, right? And then it's about generating trials and reaching more amount of consumers to try the product, and from there then the customer experience and word of mouth really has to kick in, right? So that's been the approach for us, and also like I said, be present in more channels. So it's not just about D2C. So we have been listed on Myntra, Amazon, Flipkart, Ajio, Nykaa, wherever the consumer is, right? We have not got offline till now, but from an online perspective, more the merrier, right? I mean, someone might be searching on Nykaa for innerwear and discover you there, right? And then maybe later on, when the consumer knows you, he might come to your website to shop also. So for us, different discovery touch points from a go-to market perspective, and like I said, generating trials, that is very important, because we are in a category where touch and feel is not there from an online perspective, and consumer does not really change their brand too often. So for us to generate a trial, because our product USP cannot come out till the time the consumer really tries the product, right? That's the moment of truth for us. So partnerships like Cred, for example, right? Cred has a great audience base, which is very relevant for us. So we have leveraged that very effectively to be able to reach out to consumer, generate trials, and then we see a lot of them coming back and shopping. Maybe on Amazon, it could be on our website, but discovery and distribution on top of a product assortment which is unique, and where you can demonstrate value. That's been our approach, and I think that's working for us till now. But as we scale, obviously we'll have to go offline and we'll have to expand our channels of distribution.
One of the attendees asking, since you have mentioned that you have done the partnership with Beardo and other men essential wear companies, so what is the strategy you have used working with Beardo and others?
I didn't get that exactly. What is the strategy?
What is the strategy you have used working with Beardo and others? Like since you have mentioned that you have closed a
It's simple.
partnership with
It's simple. Like, you promote me, I promote you, right? Or let's say we do trials or we do sampling, right? Or let's say right now in Almo, if you go and you shop for 2,000 rupees, you get a man company, freebie, right? So things like that, because basically we are trying to associate with the right audience who's already shopping online on some of these premium brands, and for them to know Almo, and for us to be able to attract them to Almo. Because if there is a huge audience pool of man company which is already shopping for the last 4 5 years, if I expose my audience to them and say that, hey, if you shop on Almo, you get something from man company, or if you shop on man company, you get a voucher from Almo, right? So we've done a lot of these barter deals and cross promotion deals, and these are basically zero cost marketing for us, right? Because man company is giving something because they want their product to be, reach to more audience, right? And vice versa. So I think on Facebook, obviously we are bleeding on CAC, but if we can innovate on some of these partnerships, and and see, these will never be like, I just want to clarify that 30 40 50% will always be paid media, right? What I'm trying to say here is that if you can deleverage your channels, not be dependent on one channel, but have like multiple channels opened up, what will happen is that eventually your blended ROS and your repeats will make up for the paid media cost, right? Otherwise, you'll just keep bleeding on paid media. If you're just, a lot of brands I know are like 60, 70, 80% on Facebook ads, right? Because there, obviously, you will bleed on every transaction you make, right? So you need to work on your repeat cohorts. You need to work on more channels of acquisition, which are lower cost, like affiliates or partnerships, or it could be even influencer marketing, right? So we have not like really cracked that really well, but a lot of D2C brands have really cracked influencer marketing, right? Where maybe in our category, influencer is a little more challenging. But let's say beauty brands, right? So a lot of beauty brands have really, they do one video and, they get, lakhs of visitors that day, right? And that's like basically not attribute, like you can't attribute it directly to a performance, but at an overall level, you'll be able to see that, yes, your blended ROS is, going up, right? So I think it's about innovating and, also experimenting with new channels, right? So you can obviously experiment with telecoms, banks, SMS as a channel, just because see, everyone is spending on Facebook, right? So if you just go and do that, obviously everyone will bleed, and Facebook will win, right? So the more we can collaborate, the more we can experiment and figure out new channels, even if it is like 5 10% of the traffic, that's fine. I mean, that will add up eventually from a blended perspective.
because of the recent changes in the guideline of Facebook, it's really difficult for D2C brands to scale their business through Facebook because of the higher CPCs and all. So I'm sure these partnerships are really helpful for D2C brands in terms of discovery and expansion for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if you look at it this way, let's say your Facebook CAC is, let's say X, typically it is 400, 500 rupees for everyone right now, right? So your, let's say, my underwear product is 100 rupees, right? And I would rather give away the underwear to the right audience and hope that, they would be a repeat out of it than spend 500 rupees on Facebook, right? Uh, and I'm saying, it's not this or that, it's both, right? So you need to try everything, right? And something will work. And when you look at your cohorts and data, it will tell you, what is working for you. So I think it's about experimenting, and it's not, TikTok at some point, unfortunately it got banned, but 2 3 years back, TikTok had really picked up, for a lot of brands, right? So that could be a new channel, which, and it's about staying ahead of the curve also, because see, there are like now 1,000 1,500 D2C brands, right? All of them are doing the same thing. So for us also, it's about how do we explore a new channel before others discover it, right? Because the moment it becomes mainstream, everyone is doing the same thing, so it will all end up being cluttered, right? And that's what has happened with Facebook also, essentially, right? So finding new channels of growth is also very important.
So my next question is, how do you think CLV has an impact on brand scaling up journey? How crucial it is to place it on priority list of a brand?
Yeah, so actually, my view on that is we all track ROS, right? Which is our return on spends, right? So if I spend 1 rupee, how much of revenue I'm getting? I think that's a very myopic way of looking at ROI, because ROS is a function of many variables. It's a function of AOV, it's a function of conversion rate, it's a function of what audience quality, what repeats you are going to get out of it, right? Very difficult to break even in the first transaction, for most brands, right? So ROS will never be positive in the first transaction. So then obviously what you will need to look at is your lifetime value and your cohorts, right? So eventually you need to figure out which are those channels and audience segments where if you spend 1 rupee today over a period of, let's say, next 18 months or 24 months or 36 months, whatever is your average cohort, how much are you making on top of that, right? And if you look at gaming companies, gaming companies really do this very, very well, because it's a repeat, cohort for them. The user will keep playing games, right? In case of apparels, maybe, the frequency is not very high, but the lifetime value you can still calculate, right? So let's say user will buy twice in a year, he'll buy for the next 5, 10 years. That's the average, right? So I think if you can measure customer lifetime value and CAC ratio at a channel level, that is what will give you the true ROI, where to spend and how much to spend, rather than just looking at ROS, right? Because ROS today in some channel could be low, but repeat could be high, because the audience quality is good, right? In some cases the ROS could be high, but it could be a dead, user, right? So like affiliates as a channel, right? I mean, affiliates will always give you good ROS, but you will not see repeats happening, right? Because that is driven by deals, discount, or some kind of incentive, right? So that might not be the right way to judge the audience quality, right? So I think if your CAC to LTV ratio is more than 4 or 5 at a paid media level, it's very easy for you to scale, because typically most D2C brands would be at a 50-60% gross margin. So if you calculate, if the user makes, let's say, 7 to 8 purchases over the next 18 months, right? At a overall level, even if you do 3x of what you spend from a margin perspective, it's a great profitable channel, right? So that way, if you look at it, you can scale. Otherwise it becomes a chicken and egg, right? Today my Facebook CAC, will not make sense for me to scale unless I know that that audience or that audience pool is going to repeat for me, and what is the lifetime value of that audience.
Affiliate is always good to, for the first purchase, to get the first customer acquisition costs at the lower CPAs. So I think that's where affiliate stands really well. So, any strategies worked in achieving 2 crore GMV? What would you consider as ALMO's greatest achievement?
No, greatest achievement, I don't think it's an achievement as such, but I think what we are more bullish on is, or satisfied with, is we have achieved this profitably with the unit metric profitability. That has always been our focus area. Whether it is 2 crore or 5 crore, 10 crore, eventually you will reach there over a period of time. But I think that is something which we all need to be conscious about, is that are we able to scale profitably, so without bleeding on unit metrics, right? And when I say profitability, I'm not meaning overall profitability, because obviously you're investing in the brand, you're investing in team and building your infrastructure and all of that. But at a unit economic level, the moment you try to scale, your ROS is inversely proportional to your scale, right? And your spends, right? So the biggest challenge, I would say, is how do you scale profitably? And that is something which I think we have been able to maintain till now. We are at a double digit contribution margin, and we are able to scale profitably. And as long as that happens, we are happy to, like, spend more and keep scaling, right? So at a blended level, if you're bleeding money on every transaction, then there's something wrong in your business model, right? Which either means that your product is not working, your consumer is not repeating, or it means that you're just maybe selling in the wrong channels, or spending more than what you should spend. So for us, that has always been the approach. And I think one more thing which has worked, like I said, is having multiple channels open, right? So not just within D2C, but within marketplaces also, right? So we'll not just be on Amazon or Flipkart, but we'll be on Ajio also, Nykaa also. Although that might not contribute like significantly to the revenue, but those 5 pools add up to 30-40% of your revenue, right? And that is where your overall balance comes in, and that helps you scale. So because I see a lot of entrepreneurs like just being dependent on Facebook, and the day Facebook algorithm doesn't work, your sales go down, right? Because you're so dependent on it, right? So always have like multiple channels, at least 4-5 channels which are active. There will be ups and downs. Digital is never about the same performance every day. So if you have multiple channels, you are deleveraged, and you can scale faster. So that's been our approach, and yeah, I think that has been working for us till now.
I'm sure your insights are definitely resonating with the audience, and they are going to love it. So, congratulations on your achievement first. So, recently, ALMO raised $2 million in pre-series, a round led by Inflection Point Ventures. With this fund infusion, what will be your approach to scale your business further?
It's the same for us. I mean, frankly, fundraising for us is not a milestone. It should not be for any entrepreneur, although it comes across like that in the media. I think fundraising is more of a, I would say it's like a booster shot for you to be able to scale faster. And for us, the fundamentals have always been important. And with this round also, the aim is to scale faster, reach more consumers, improve our product lines, launch more categories, improve our team quality, customer experience, operational, processes. So for us, just I would not say even a milestone. It's more of a, part of the journey. And I think the biggest goal for us is growth, right? So obviously we have gone through our initial product market fit iteration, and we've reached a certain number of audiences. Now we know what is working. For us now, it is majorly about distribution scale up and improving the customer experience, like I said. And right now we are like primarily online. So maybe in the near future we also need to go offline and target a broader audience pool. So I think capital helps us experiment more and learn faster and grow faster. So that is the whole objective of the round. And yeah, I think over the next 18 months we are looking at like a 4-5x growth from where we are. So that's the immediate near future goal for us.
I think existing stage has just been fed rather than a lot of brands were going offline then online. And now the trend has been again, flipped.
Yeah.
Online brands are going offline then. That's how you
True.
see.
Yeah,
Amazing.
because I think online definitely is a great way to start a business, to start a brand, to test the product market fit, because offline does not support that, right? Offline, you can't really go in and experiment too much, right? I mean, you need a mass market product which can scale for retailers to stock you, right? So online is a great launch pad from that perspective. But I think because of the whole clutter which has come online, and also because of offline opening back, and with Corona receding, I think there's a shift in consumer behavior also back, right? So last 3 years have been a little different. So I think a lot of brands are realizing that beyond a certain scale, going offline is very critical, especially in a country like India, where touch and feel and being visible is so important in the right touch points. So I think it makes sense for a lot of us to accelerate that. From an investor perspective, yes, I think 2 years back offline was uncool. Today, everyone is talking about offline, because they have also realized that beyond the point, online only, it was never online only, right? D2C was always about digital first. It was never about digital only, right? So I think that thesis still remains. Digital is a great way to start a brand, launch a brand, target micro consumers, test out your product. And once you are confident that yes, this is something which there is a value proposition which works, then it's about distribution, right? And distribution can be anywhere. It can be offline, it can be international, it can be wherever your consumer is, right? So I think channel doesn't matter for a brand end of the day. D2C matters because I think D2C is a very unique channel which gives you, even if you open offline EBOs, right, like exclusive brand outlets, you will not get real-time data of walk-ins versus how which consumer saw which product and picked up which product. That is only possible on D2C. So D2C obviously should always be the first medium to launch the brand, because you get to learn so much out of it, right? I mean, you can talk to consumers real time, right, and see their patterns, right? But once you know what is working, then it's about just scaling up, right? So then you just double down on multiple distribution channels. And offline, even in mature markets, digital is like 8-10% of the market, even post corona, right? So I'm just saying ki, 90% of the market will be offline, and in a country like India, offline will never go away, right? So I think as brand owners, we will obviously want to be wherever the consumer is, and target a wider pool of audience. So yeah, that's true. I think that trend is reversing very fast.
So, failure is something that every entrepreneur faces, and they don't wanted to face it. Failure, especially. So, what have been your biggest failures, and what have you learned from them? If you had one piece of advice for our audience, what that it would be?
Yeah, I think that list is very long. ALMO is my fifth venture actually, and yeah, I think when you're young and you're starting off for the first time, I think it's more the passion which blinds you, and there's a problem you want to solve, right? And that's been the case with me also. But after 2, 3 ventures, 4 ventures, making the same mistakes again and again, I think you tend to realize eventually, what it really matters. For me personally, a lot of learnings. I think I failed in all ways possible, and still in the journey. But I think if I think about it, like what actually differentiates success from failure, I would say the biggest thing which I have seen is perseverance, right? So, and that is something which I still need to work upon. So like I said, Almo is still a continuation of Fetty's journey, right? So Fetty's failed, right? Although we were pioneers, we were ahead of the curve, we were doing great things, but eventually success is also a function of so many variables like timing, luck. It's not just your effort, right? It's so many other variables, competition, environment of the market, for example, right now, right? So I think what I've seen is a lot of my peers who have started with me and today who are successful, a lot of them have stuck around, right? And I think that is something which is very difficult for us to do, because all of us are humans and we lose motivation, and there is opportunity cost also, right? We all tend to think about opportunity cost. So I think entrepreneurs don't have any opportunity cost. Entrepreneurs should make time their best friend, right? So as long as time is your best friend, success is eventuality. I mean, it's not a question mark whether you will succeed or not. It's more about when you will succeed, right? But that patience level, frankly, when I started up, maybe 10 years back, I did not have that patience, right? I think with today's entrepreneurs, more younger generation, because back then, a lot of young people did not start up. Starting up was not that cool. Now it is cool, right? But I see the patience level is actually going down, even further. So I think a lot of us need to be cognizant of that fact that it's a 5-10 year journey, 15-year journey. It's not a 2-year journey ki start kiya or hero ban gaye. So if you look at a lot of Indian startups, like from InfoEdge time, all have been 15-20-year journeys, right? So any one of us who can, basically hold ground, you will most probably not fail, because see, we have fungible skill sets. We can figure out things. We are adaptable, right? As long as we are in the game, we will definitely figure out something or the other, right? As long as we stay put, right? So I would say that is the biggest learning for me. Like perseverance is something which is very difficult, easy to say, but very difficult to inculcate. Apart from that, I think it's been like a wild ride, tried so many things, done so many things. So sometimes when you look back, you're like, there's so many learnings. Hindsight and insight is always there, right? Insight is hindsight, right? So when you look back, you always feel, oh, yeah, aise kar sakte the, ye waise kar sakte the. But you really don't know. When you're in the journey, you can't predict it, right? Only thing you can do is like stay put and make sure that you're there whenever the right opportunity comes and the right time comes.
Okay. So we are picking a few questions from live audience. So Ritsipal is asking, what behavioral changes have you seen over the period in buyer's journey, and how do you manage consumers' demand?
A lot of changes here. I think 10 years back, e-commerce in India did not exist. People did not want to shop online. I remember in my first venture, people used to call and say, "Aapka office kahan hai? Aapka office aake hum kharidenge," right? And they used to actually come to the office, right? And COD was not a thing back then. That's when COD was invented, right? Because people were very hesitant to shop online, right? From there to today, I think it's a sea change, right? Today, online shopping has become a default, and we used to joke back then, ki, why does a customer need discount to shop online? Tomorrow when he goes to shopper stop, will he ask for a discount, right? Because today that has happened. So today if I need to go to shopper stop to shop, I will actually say, why should I like go to shopper stop, right? I mean, it's a waste of time for me, right? So I think the wheels have turned, on that behavior. And today consumers are very, very open to experimenting. Imagine a new brand like ALMO, launching online, no one knowing the brand, and we doing like 2 crores, 3 crores of revenue in a month, right? This was not possible 10 years back, because consumers were very, very, not used to experimenting, right? So I think digital has really opened up the horizons for the consumers, opened up the exposure levels. They are much more aware of what is going on in the world. And I think today the consumer is evolved, but also the expectations are very evolved. Like I said, right? You shop on Amazon, within 1 hour your order is shipped, right? And that's what you expect when you shop on an Almo or an Emans, but that doesn't happen, right? Because we don't have the infrastructure like Amazon, right? And that's where, again, I would say companies like Amiza, in fulfillment, or Unicommerce or Shipway, and all these companies actually helping all these D2C brands to level up their game and be at par with the Amazon experience. So Amazon has definitely set the gold standard in terms of customer experience. And now today you have companies like Zepto and these new companies which are actually like delivering in 10 minutes, right? So that's completely disruptive, right? So imagine the customer expectations now being 10 minutes of delivery, right? And they want underwear also in 10 minutes, because it's a habit, right? It's not a need, right? So I think it's a very challenging environment. And that's where I think D2C brands really come in. We are upping the game for the consumer, and that's where traditional peers will actually maybe not be able to keep pace, right? That's the hope, right? Because we will innovate, we will have to reach the consumer in the way they want, they expect us to. And that's where our DNA would be more nimble compared to our traditional peers. So yeah, I think I've seen a sea change in the consumer behavior, and in a positive way. 10 years back, no one would imagine this would happen. So many brands being born online and scaling to 100, 200, 500 crores, private labels, right? This was not possible 10 years back.
Agree, completely agree. So Ankesh Sharma is asking, like, how do you analyze the upcoming trends and innovations in the market?
Upcoming trends in?
So how do you analyze the upcoming trends and innovations in the market?
I think just like personally for me, it's just about being in the market, reading a lot, meeting people, talking to, keeping a eye on trends, what is happening, who's doing what. It's more about being consciously aware, right? And I think you can read the patterns if you're, let's say you're in one domain, right? So in that domain, if you're more and more engrossed, you will obviously get a sense of what is happening, right? And as entrepreneurs, I think we also need to be much more aware of our environment. It's not just about what we are doing, right? And a lot of those cues will come to you from the market. And yeah, I think personally for me, it's always been like before sleep, I would read like half an hour or 1 hour every day, right? Just like all these VC circles and so many blogs and so many articles. There's so much of content out there to read, right? Twitter chats and it's too much. I mean, there's an information overload actually, right? So it's just about separating the wheat from the chaff and like figuring out like what is the impact of this, where is this going, right? And what is Amazon doing, for example? Why are they doing this? Is there some direction which they are going into? So as an individual brand, you would want to follow those cues, right? And basically see that, okay, if this is where the market is going, how do I adopt to it? So it's just being, I would say, and obviously there are McKinseys of the world and all those reports come out, but I find those very boring because by the time they would report it, we are entrepreneurs, right? We are in the game, right? So we would know it better than them. But yeah, a lot of analysts would come out with reports and all, but I never read them personally because I find it very, very boring. But I think just being in the market, talking to people, like being part of communities. There are so many communities around D2C. I run one of them called D2C Insider. So yeah, I think just being there helps. Being connected to people.
Completely agree because community marketing is one of the biggest tool now every D2C is focusing on, and a lot of founders are coming and joining hands together to help each other. So this is one of the new way of doing and expanding your business in terms of marketing, in terms of discovery, expansion, and partnership, of course. So one of our attendee has asked, what is the best marketing channel for D2C?
There is no best marketing channel. Every channel is a bleed. The best channel is obviously organic, right? I mean, if you can build a brand and if people are searching for you or they're coming directly on your website, there's no better channel than that. Apart from that, like I said, and any paid media will be about the CAC to LTV to cohort to repeat. I think it's that science, right? Building the funnels, creating top of the funnel awareness, and then educating the consumer about your product, and then converting them bottom of the funnel, and then the whole repeat cycle, right? So I don't think there's any ideal channel, and no single channel will always scale for you, right? So that's why I said that you need to be not dependent on one channel but have multiple channels, right? And different channels will have different behavior, different patterns. So at the end of the day, it's like a melting pot, right? So you would acquire consumers from different places, different kind of consumers, different cost of acquisition, and you would then see the behavior. So I would say digital is all about experimentation and data, right? So the more fronts you can open, the more data you can get, the more behavior patterns you can analyze. So I would say obviously the best channel from an ROI perspective, I would say is CRM, because that's your own audience, right? So let's say you have something like spin the wheel on your website, which we have in ALMO, right? So I get almost 10% of my traffic converting to subscribers, right? Now from those subscribers, can I like churn out transacting users? That's obviously the highest ROI because that's a own asset, right? I already know the customer's email ID, phone number, whatever, right? Because on Facebook, every time I target, there will be a CPM cost, right? But CRM also cannot scale unless your acquisition, your top of the funnel is scaling. So it will always be a mix of acquisition, retention, and repeats.
Yoda has asked how to manage growth and bottom line together for a D2C brand.
Sorry, Neha, I didn't get that.
How to manage growth and bottom line together for a D2C brand.
Yeah, guys. So that is the trick, right? I mean, if you are entrepreneurs and you work with agencies, they'll tell you, अरे सर मतलब spend ज़्यादा करो तो sales ज़्यादा आ जाएगा. I'm like कि ठीक है, spend ज़्यादा करते हैं लेकिन ROI ज़्यादा करो, right? तो they're like नहीं नहीं पहले visibility बनेगा फिर तो ROS आएगा. I'm like नहीं पहले ROS आएगा तो ही ना visibility बनाएंगे. So I think it's always a hard balance. I think you need to set a ground, what I would say is like set some guardrails, right? So beyond a certain ROS or beyond a certain ROI, let's say it doesn't make sense for you to bleed, right? You might not scale beyond that. So I think then the job is to figure out how to scale with that guardrail, right? It cannot ever be a non-guardrail growth because that is surely going to kill you. No amount of funding, and you mentioned about learnings. one learning has been, capital is not a winner takes it all, right? I mean, capital does not make you win because capital is not infinite, right? So you've seen companies who have raised 100, 200 million also, they've got shut, right? Fetis was in fact the most funded startup in 2011. We raised our Series A of 5 million, right? Which today's age would be like $100 million Series A, right? And we burnt out in 2 years and we shut down, right? So I think capital cannot be the solution. Capital can be an enabler. So I think this growth versus bottom line, balancing is very, very important. And that is what the trick is, right? Otherwise, anyone can scale. If it is just about spending money and, burning money and scaling, that anyone can do, right? So the trick is, how do you like figure out sources which can give you lower cost of acquisition, blend it with your higher cost of acquisition, and at the same time still ensure that you're growing month on month, right? And it is possible. It is not that, it is not that difficult. I think it's more of a mindset also, because see, if you think as a businessman, I mean, why will you burn money to like sell, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? I always say that I can go outside my office and put up a ALMO stall and give away products for free, because eventually वही होता है ना, Facebook पे 700 रुपए का कैक है और 600 रुपए का यूवी है. It is better that we just give away products for free, right? I mean, I find it absurd, right? So it has to be a mixed approach. You have to figure out how to get blended traffic, some organic traffic or viral traffic or influencer or whatever is your hack, right? There has to be a way for you to be able to achieve unit metric profitability, right? I think EBITDA burn is okay as long as you are scaling and there is a large market you are going after. Investors are also okay with that because they know that you are creating value, right? But a unit metric burn is actually, in some categories, unit metric burn also makes sense. Let's say very high repeat categories, right? So let's say groceries, right? There, the user will buy like 10 times in a month. So there, maybe you'll burn in the first order, second order, third order also. But you know that my lifetime value is very high, right? Or my repeat is very, very high, frequency is very high. So I think this is something which we all need to be conscious about. How do we balance growth with profitability and grow profitability? Profitable growth is nirvana, right? Only growth is good. Profitability is great, but profitable growth is nirvana, right? Because that is the sweet spot, where you are actually able to scale profitably.
I'm just loving every bit of your information, whatever you are sharing. Some very insightful points. One of the attendee has asked, since so many players are entering into the D2C market, so how can one stay relevant and different from others? Where should a brand keep its focus more?
Hold on. So many players entering the market. How can one stay relevant and different from others? Where should a brand? Yeah, I think, see, D2C is all about innovation and constant innovation, right? So if you look at personal care as a space, like someone like Wow, which is one of the pioneers of D2C in India, right? Every year their product hero SKU will change, right? So today it might be onion hair shampoo. Last year it was something else. Next year it will be something else. So with D2C, it's about constant innovation. It's not, you innovate once and then, you stagnate because your competition will catch up. So M Caffeine launched, caffeine, body range and face range and all of that, and today every brand has caffeine, coffee scrub and all of that, right? So staying ahead of the curve is very important. Staying close to the consumer, and see, a lot of these innovations will come from the consumer need itself, right? Consumer will only tell you कि यार ये भी try करते हैं, या oh, it would be great if I had this, right? So that problem solution approach has to be there to keep solving problems and innovating. I think that is the only way to stay relevant and stay ahead of the curve. There's no other way, right? Because in today's world, the entry cost is very low, like I said, because of all the enablers out there, right? So anyone can start a D2C brand. It takes hardly like maybe 10 lakh rupees to start a brand today, right? So that way the entry cost is almost negligible. So for us, we have to stay ahead of the curve, keep experimenting, keep innovating. And from a focus perspective, see, it depends. I mean, obviously, in the long run, if you ask like what is going to make us win is brand, right? But in the short run, it's a chicken and egg situation because we have limited resources. We can't really build a brand, right? So I feel that a lot of brands are also built by distribution, where the consumer is trying your brand and you are in the consumer's mind space. Eventually, you become a brand, and once you hit a certain scale, you can start building the brand, right? So that's been the playbook for most of the D2C brands in India. And today, obviously, because of more capital coming in, we see the brand levels going up very high, right? So new brands would also be doing a lot of brand building, right? So it all depends how well capitalized you are. I mean, you can't go wrong in investing on the brand, right? I mean, the earlier the better. But from a focus perspective, profitable growth, brand building, and innovation, product innovation, customer experience. I think these are the areas where, otherwise our traditional peers will also catch up with us very fast, right? It's not like Jockey is not selling online or they are not having e-commerce capability. They have all of that, right? But where we can win is innovation, being, consumer centric and being close to the consumer, and obviously building the brand on top of it.
Awesome. So moving ahead to the last question of the event. So as per recent report by vendors, D2C market in India is poised to become $100 billion addressable market by 2035. So what do you think the Indian D2C e-commerce industry will look like in 5 years from now? What are your hopes and goals?
Yeah, guys. So, having seen the whole evolution of D2C, it's been great. I mean, last 5 years have really proven that brands can be built online and profitably and scaled. And I think there's been a lot of excitement in the last few years. The whole ecosystem, right? Not just investors or entrepreneurs, but enablers and, service agencies and all of that, right? So I think it's great because that is how an ecosystem is built. I mean, there has to be some initial success for others to follow. At the same time, I believe that India is a brand starved country, right? So there are hardly any brands out there. You pick up any category, because modern trade never existed in India. It was all, long tail or, unorganized trade, right? So brand building is not in our DNA, right? Indians are not great at brand building. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to build brands, niche brands in multiple categories. And I personally feel that wherever we are today, the next decade will be like 100x of that. If you look at the last decade, I mean, D2C did not exist a decade back, right? So we have at least started, and I would say whatever we see now is a MVP. There are few brands which have crossed 500 crore. There are bunch of brands which have crossed 100 crore. Maybe in the next 10 years, I think one more thing which I feel is that from a D2C trajectory perspective, India will actually create global brands, right? So it's not just about Indian consumer, but see what happens is when you have a homogeneous market which is large enough to support, a business to bloom. Like you look at China, right? I mean, all these Tencent and all these companies, because they had a strong home market, they were able to build a business and then they go global, right? I think similar thing is expected out of D2C in India, because if we first find a product market fit in India, we find a foundation and base. A lot of these use cases are international, and we have seen some early signs of, let's say, a Vadham or even a Wow. They are very big in the US. In fact, they're the top seller on Amazon US, right? Vadham is like, obviously pioneer of, building a brand from India for US. So I think a lot of these brands will go global also. So next 10 years, I would expect that India should produce dozens of global brands, not just build like large brands in India. And I think that is going to happen. I mean, that wheel is in motion. Now it is very difficult to stop it. There will be headwinds, there will be, ups and downs, but I believe fundamentally, brand building from a D2C perspective is disruptive, and it is going to sustain. Eventually we will also see traditional brands, which in the US has happened, traditional brands also launching their D2C brands, and that's happening in India also, right? Because the whole digital first playbook is, very, very consumer first, and it's very, very nimble and adaptive. And that's where consumer expectations are today. They want innovation, they want freshness, they want to experiment. So I think that is not going to change. It's not a direction which you can change. Although there might be certain headwinds in the short run, ki Facebook ka CAC बढ़ गया hai, maybe investing environment is not great. But again, that's where entrepreneurs' perseverance, I think, will have to kick in. So fundamentally, I believe next 10 years, D2C from India is going to like be very big. It's not something which is just a hype or a it's not something which is just by accident. I would say it is clearly a strong fundamental need.
Yeah, of course, D2C segment is growing so fast. So, all right, guys, this brings us to the end of this wonderful session with Abhishek Shah. So, before we end the session, here's a big announcement. We are giving up away amazing shipway offer. Get flat 50% off on your first recharge. Offer valid for first time recharge only. To request a demo call or to understand how Shipway works, please click on the demo link mentioned in the chat section.
Great. I would also love you guys to shop on Almo. We are at almoware.com. You can use code friends30. Just try it out. In case any feedbacks, would be happy to you know uh, hear from you guys.
This was indeed a value packed session, although there is a lot more that we could have learned. Unfortunately, we are limited by time here. I hope you guys loved this session. Once again, I would like to thank Abhishek and our lovely audience for taking out time to be part of this event. Abhishek, would you like to say a quick thanks and bye to our audience?
Yeah, thanks everyone. I think it was a great session, and so great to interact with all of you. And thanks Neha for coordinating this, and wonderful to be here. I wish all of you like
Awesome.
a good evening.
Awesome. Okay, guys, this is not where it ends. We have a lot more events lined up for you. So don't forget to check out our event page. On that note, I would like to say goodbye, adios, sayonara to everyone who have joined here today. Take care, guys. Stay safe. Bye bye.
Bye guys. Take care. Bye Neha. Bye guys.
Bye bye.